My name is Ngwenya. I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition for Market and Liberal Solutions. Now, the coalition itself is a think tank that believes in the ideals of the free market economy, the respect of private property rights, and of course, responsible capitalism. Now, today I'm having a little chat with Mr. Alois Masepe, who is the business development manager of a very big holding company that is responsible for running the property portfolio of Harare city that is based in Zimbabwe. Now, Mr. Masepe, we know there's a lot of discussion and debates in Zimbabwe about the virtues of capitalism, the importance of property rights, because the government has been taking a lot of drastic measures in terms of the way they deal with property rights. Now, you being an individual who runs a huge portfolio for Harare city, how do you understand the importance of say, property rights in the overall matrix of economic development of this country?
Yeah, firstly, in some sections in this country, capitalism is not a virtue. They regard it as a vice. But we have a situation in this country where the government does not practice a clear philosophy. I regard capitalism as one of those developmental ideologies. You have communism, which is central. Everything comes from the center. And you have capitalism, which is basically based on the free economy and private property. You also have sub-economies, economic ideologies like communalism.
The sort of Ujamaa, Tanzania type of...
Yes, as opposed to communism. In this country, we have a mixed grade. The developmental ideology is confused. Even if the ruling party says it is communism or Marxist in orientation, in practice, it is not like that. It is a mixed bag. As far as I'm concerned, if you want to develop, capitalism is the way to go. One, it is based on free market and also democracy. It's part of capitalism, and private property. Those are the bedrocks of capitalism.
Yeah, but you see, the challenge is that my think tank wants to transform the minds of the legislator, the minds of the leaders, to move away from that centralist type of planning to a more liberal, ideology that believes in the virtues of capitalism and property rights. But you mentioned that the government is a government that has evolved to a Marxist-Leninist ideology. Now, what kind of obstacle am I facing here? I want to prepare myself here.
You are faced with a situation where, as I said earlier, the government has not clearly defined its developmental ideology. In terms of theoretical application, they say we are Marxists, Leninists.
Yeah.
In practice, they are not. So the entire continent requires development, requires capital. And who sets the terms of development? It is a win-win situation. The government is capital poor, resource rich. The capitalists are cash rich, but resource poor. So it's a win-win situation. But in a capitalist world, competition is key.
Exactly, because this is why it's very important that in my think tank's effort to try and convince the policymakers, I need to be able to prove to them that that centralized type of planning that disowns private property ownership for individual is a negative element of development.
Private ownership is the engine, is the motivation. Everybody, even at the individual level, wants to better himself or herself.
We are continuing our discussion and debate on the importance of property rights in a developing country like Zimbabwe. How this interesting ideal of a liberal ideology, plays a big role in enhancing the wealth of the people and the wealth of the nation. Now, I'm having a chat once more with Mr. Ozobina, who for a long time was the chairperson of a business association. He's a property holder himself and an investor, and is currently heading the board of the Harare Holdings. Harare Holdings, Mr. Bina, is one of the biggest portfolio holders in the country. So how do you place this whole issue of property rights in the context of development and poverty reduction?
Look, I think the first point, or the point of departure really, Rejoice, is that, like I was saying, the political economy. If you take it in the context of development, economically and otherwise, property rights is actually the energy that powers up movement of creativity, movement of innovation, and movement of various strategies of entrepreneurship into application.
Exactly on the opposite spectrum, that custodianship of the natural endowment, custodian of the resources of the nation must be in the hands of government, because they argue that it is government that can redistribute these resources fairly. And I think really, to me, it sounds very self-defeating. What's your take there?
There is a balance we need to create here. Let me draw it down to issues of copyrights. Draw it down to issues of trademarks. If I cannot hold title to my trademark, I am exposed in the market. If I cannot hold title to a particular product, if somebody can go out there willy-nilly and copyright it and redistribute it, it's my effort for nothing. So this is the meat of property rights. As long as we don't respect property rights, these noble initiatives that are supposed to be solutions to industrial problems, social problems, political problems, will continue to vanish into thin air.
Yeah, because you see, as a think tank that argues for liberating ideas and ensuring that policymakers take a direction towards a more free and more liberal type of planning. What kind of obstacles am I facing here? Because I know that this government is evolved through a Marxist-Leninist evolution, and these policymakers are surely convinced that central planning is the right thing to do. What kind of obstacle am I facing here?
Rejoice, it's very easy. I think you've said it right. It's a Marxist-Leninist evolution. So I think maybe it is the speed of evolving that is really lagged behind. That is not the game in town anymore. The game in town is competitiveness. The game in town is comparative advantage, set on the basis of clear innovative strategies to outcompete the next person. And you can only be able to outcompete the next person if you own your own process and you keep it yourself. How do you do that? You don't do that by actually opening up and say free for all, because the better one will not be found within that goal. What you need to do is set a clear benchmark for competition, set clear rules of the game, and ensure that, when you look at property rights, there is a very, very critical aspect to it. Corruption-free, accountability, and all those things that go with it. That's where your institutions that are superintended over criminal law, over property law, over contract law, come into force, so that you protect all these aspects. It's a whole basket that we need to do, eventually defining how your competitiveness is supposed to be not only a national item, but regional and international item.
In other words, it's not going to be easy to persuade these, I want to call them leftist zealots, that after all, capitalism is not as evil as it sounds. Because in your own words, you believe that it's a system that gives one an opportunity to express themselves and make profit in the process.
Being not an extremist that I am, I suppose if you look at our current configuration of empowerment in this country, you are looking at the people that are being empowered, but that are being disempowered at the same time. The reason is, and we don't want to accept it, is the gap of property rights. Once you want to empower somebody, give them entire authority, entire jurisdiction over what they have.
Exactly.
And then you then trigger the creativity button that somebody will be able to then create value for the nation.
Just over 100 years ago, when this place was nothing but a tropical jungle, a place that was dominated by men and women in cowboy hats, this was a mere village. But today, Harare city in Zimbabwe is a bustling metropolitan, complete with individual property rights. Now at COMALISO, we believe that the ideals of private property rights, the ideals of constitutionalism, and the ideals of responsible capitalism are the elements that we need to develop a country. The Coalition for Market and Liberal Solutions is a think tank that promotes the ideals of private property ownership. And I'm speaking to Juliet Makombe, who is town clerk of a local authority outside Harare called Rural Local Board. And we want to have an exchange of ideas how private property ownership improves or enhances the quality of life of citizens and perhaps even corporate entity. So Juliet, like I'm saying, just give us a bit of an idea. How is the issue of private property ownership affected or improved or enhanced the life of citizens of your local authority?
Thank you, Mr. Ngwenya. Rua, it's a unique town in that we are different from other local authority areas. In Rua, you find that 90% of the land is owned privately, and as a result, it is actually shaped a different quality town. When you compare with other towns, we have become the envy of other towns, especially because of this private ownership initiative. You find that the developers, they've used that as a leverage to go and get maybe loans from the banks. Exactly. Or even where individuals, when they pay upfront for their stands, the developer would use that finance as part of developing the stand. Eventually, the title deeds are then transferred to those individuals.
So they become convertible.
Yeah, exactly. And then those individuals use that title deeds sometimes to go and as a collateral for purposes of developing their houses. So you find that in Rua, we are known to be having red roofs or tiled roofs. That also actually enhances the quality of the towns in terms of even the houses they are building.
I mean that our African governments believe that local authorities should actually own the properties so that they are able to run the properties on behalf of the citizens. They argue that it's cheaper for the citizens and the houses become more affordable. So do you think that is it a correct interpretation that whenever there is private property ownership, it exaggerates the price, the rentals of that property?
I think the effect of the ownership being vested in an individual actually it guarantees a lot of things. Even issues to do with inheritance. We are dealing with a lot of cases where there's a deceased estate. Obviously, the children, the surviving spouse, they want to continue taking ownership of that property. So I think if government was to develop the houses on behalf of the people, I think we are removing
that sense of continuity.
Exactly.
From a policy perspective, I know the local board is a regulator. It is possible that one can actually explain that as a good policy for every local authority in Africa, for citizens to be encouraged to own their properties, for local authorities just to manage the processes and the transfers of ownership so that it can enhance the quality of life.
Definitely, because I think also there comes a point where government cannot be seen doing everything, and especially we don't have enough resources to be expecting government to be building a house for each and every individual. So you'd rather is it devolve or allow the individuals to take that initiative.
But then there's a contradiction in the sense that I am one of those individuals, property owners, who proposes that water should be supplied by private companies, and your local authority feels you are in a better position to supply water, and I thought it's more efficient if the same citizen who owns the property becomes the same citizen who invests in supplying water for his authority, for his consumption. What's your take on that?
No, I think water is a human right. I think you are trying to distribute water to each and every individual. Like there is a quotation in the Bible to say God, wants to supply everybody with water. So equally, the local authority would be trying to take that, not really playing God, but trying to take that ownership. Because remember, community, there are those who have not. You can look at even an ordinary vendor or different income groups. So really, we don't want to remove that mandate from the local authority. We have this problem of they tend to put profits, and because also you have to take into consideration that the water pricing aspect, it's sort of controlled by the state to make sure water is affordable. But the private sector, in such a scenario, I don't think they'll be able to recover all their costs.
Our belief and our principle is that when individuals own property, it has a better meaning and value to their lives than individuals who stay in properties that are either owned by the government or owned by the local authority. My colleague and friend, my neighbor, owns this private property. So perhaps you want to just give us a bit of an idea. How does owning your property affect your life, or how does it improve the quality of your life?
Ndozongoti inzvimbo yangu chete, but otherwise kuma-services tingataurese kuti kumvura kwacho, tingataure kuti kumagetsi kwacho, zvese zviringoripuwa.
But we are talking about kuti, since you own the property, what difference does it make in your life as an individual, as opposed to stay in a property that is not your own, or where you are renting or lodging from somebody else? In other words, the title deeds are in your name. So how does that affect your life as an individual? Does it make a difference? Yeah.
Kana ma-title deeds, I mean, unokwanisa like paida uchida unokwereta mari, uchida kudaro you can use ma-title deeds ako. Otherwise, kungoti you are your own boss, apana one answerable to, besides you are a local board. Unogara zviri peaceful.
My second, point of interest would come that my belief as an individual is that if the local authority can allow you to own your own property and you have your own title deeds, which is efficient, which is good for you, why is it that the same local authority, which is a sub-unit of a government, wants to supply water to you and they fail to supply quality water to you? Why don't they leave that to a private company to supply water? Would we say that for you it's an option, or it is not?
Ipapo tataenda kumberi takafana kutanga taziva kuti why veruwa local board vacho can't supply the water. Why in the first place? Takafana tanga taita ma-details ese wayo, then from their own tinenge tane an informed opinion kuti kakutadzwa nezvakati chakati ndochikwainda, otherwise tichataura kuti vari kutadza dhuze ivo vatowo padhuze. Because I don't know, imakambotaurawo nawo here?
Absolutely, because remember I was I've been at the local board today, and it is very clear kuti iwo kana uchitaura nezvemvura, water is a huge investment. Now the question being, as a private property owner, they will levy you, they are charging you rates, and from those rates they expect to invest in the capital budget. It is that capital budget they are saying it is not capable. First of all, for the first reason being, the default rate is very high. In other words, they will never levy enough rates. They will never charge you and me, property owners in this locality, enough to be able to invest in water reticulation. So this is why I'm always saying to them, the councillor and the town clerk and the chairperson and the mayor, why don't you just get a private company to do that? Because the private company can supply me with bread every morning. It can supply me with milk and sugar without complaining about investment. Why don't they use the same model to supply water? They go to a private company. The private company will supply the water.
A private company ine madirectors ayo vanenge vachida kuti zvinhu zviite zvakanaka vawane mari yavo. Value is to wana value, iwo wana mari.
It's a win-win situation.
Yekuti once vangonzi vauya zvinoita weresese zvatutaura izvi kuti ruwa local board pachezvaiyo it's like inoita fanaka charity kuti they are doing us a favor,
a philanthropy,
not kuti vari kuita business. Because if it was business wise zvichwati tikadai tine mvura.
Look, ZESA is supposed to be supplying us with electricity, and they are a public company, and they are failing to do that. Right? The railways is a public authority. They are supposed to be shifting coal wagons, and they are failing to do that. The Grain Marketing Board is supposed to be managing strategic grain reserve, but they are failing. There seems to me a very clear record here.
Ipapo panotinetse kana vakuregulate. That means kuti vanetenge vakutoisa tumwe tuma extra charges yekuti inotopedzera mvura cha expensive
yakudhura.
Inopedzera yato expensive, and since iye zvino varaita system yekuti mvura tigare takabhadhara kudhara kuti kuita fanga ichaitwa prepaid
or prepaid. Well, they've talked about my prepaid meter. It's not likely, but for electricity,
it's not likely to go mvura.
No, the water prepayment, because the town clerk was saying water is a human right. So being a right, it means that there is a certain minimum amount and quantity that should be supplied as a constitutional obligation. But that's where I have got a problem, because everything that is, even shelter is a human right, and it can be supplied by a private company. Food is a human right, it can be supplied by a private company. So I do not understand where the paradox and the contradiction is. If water is a human right, give it to a private company and you set the standards, the volumes, the frequencies, the quality, and we can all have water. The point is that, I think as citizens we will never agree on whether or not public companies like water companies supply water efficiently or inefficiently. But the point is that there is a very strong history that shows that policymakers have always encouraged the supply of public products like water and electricity through public companies, which doesn't actually work, because most of the time in this locality, my colleague and myself, we don't get water. Electricity, comes, in blips and blaps. So it is not possible for a government to take those responsibilities. They are a responsibility of the individual citizens and companies. This is what our ideal is, and our belief is that the government should only remain as a regulator and a policy maker, and leave the supply of goods and services to private citizens who can do it efficiently. I've taken you around, the city. I've taken you around to see the individuals. Some of the individuals who believe in the same ideals that we believe in at COMALISO. Others might have different ideas. But it is very clear that as we go towards an era where we demand and we want development in this country, liberty is a key issue. We are convinced at COMALISO that without property rights, without constitutionalism, and without responsible capitalism, our ideals will be difficult to fulfill. But the mission is possible. Our mission to have a country and legislators and policymakers that push the ideal of liberalism, that respect the critical importance of property rights and how it changes the lives of the people of Zimbabwe, are the ideals that are an uncanny and undying principle that drives us at COMALISO. So I want you to, I'm inviting you to join me and supporting me in bringing liberty, the liberty of the mind, the liberty of the individuals, the liberty that COMALISO believes in, the principle and the beliefs of property rights, constitutionalism, and responsible capitalism. Thank you.